Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Healthcare Marketing Executive. Saul Marquez here, and I am so thrilled to have today's guest on the podcast. His name is Ankit Shah. He is the Vice President at SetPoint Medical, and I'm so thrilled to get to know him a little bit better, help you understand what they're doing at SetPoint Medical, and talk some marketing, of course. Ankit, thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So Ankit, tell us a little bit about you. What got you into the business of healthcare and marketing in particular?
Yeah, happy to provide a little bit of background. So I was always interested in healthcare due to affinity from my parents. They, from a fairly early age, for my siblings and me, they instilled this sense of leave something meaningful behind, do more in your career than just earning a paycheck. So that inclined me to go towards healthcare broadly. And I actually started off as a biomedical engineer. So I have my undergrad.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
In
That's
biomedical
cool.
engineering. Started off my career at the FDA in the lab doing research on preclinical models. That got me to Medtronic in their cardiovascular business in Santa Rosa.
We share that background. I was at Medtronic for about 8 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I was started off in the mothership of medical devices, learned a lot of great lessons. And that's where I got introduced to what was medical device marketing, thanks to some fantastic mentors at Medtronic. And that's where I made the transition from being in the lab on the research side of things to the marketing side of things. I was fortunate enough to join the endovascular group, as it was called back in the day, which was focused on aortic vascular interventions. They were expanding broadly, and I jumped into that group's marketing team in what they call pipeline marketing, which is really upstream marketing. There's a number of terms that I used for that, but the idea was leverage my engineering background, learn how do you talk to clinicians, understand the unmet clinical needs, and then appreciate the business side of things to determine if it makes a clinical as well as financial sense to invest in iterations or innovations of technologies for the business unit. So that was fantastic experience. Really found a home for myself in the marketing group, and then recognized if I wanted to do that, I had to probably earn some chops in how to be a good marketer. So I ended up going to business school at Penn for my MBA, and that's when my journey to startup marketing started. After my MBA, I joined Intersect ENT, and
what a great company, man.
Yeah, pretty fortunate again to be surrounded by fantastic leaders like Susan Stimson, Lisa Earnhardt, Rob Binney, a lot of great commercial leaders who's honed and allowed me to really understand how you talk to physicians, how do you develop the right products, launch them appropriately. Yeah, so really fortunate to have been in the right place at the right time multiple times in my career to now be sitting here at SetPoint.
Listen, when this kind of stuff happens over and over, it stops being luck, right? Like you definitely are positioning yourself well and talent. So I think that's so cool. I was actually chatting with Lisa. I was at Device Talks, Minnesota, and obviously she's running Abbott's portfolio now. And yeah, just an incredible group of people there. Talk to us about SetPoint.
Yeah, so SetPoint is, I would say, one of those really cool stories that's taken a while to develop, but we're really glad we're here. In a nutshell, what we're doing is we're taking a neuromodulation approach to treat autoimmune diseases, which have typically been treated by biological drugs or really targeted high potency molecules. Our primary indication that we have FDA approval for now is in rheumatoid arthritis. It's an autoimmune disease that impacts primarily the joints of patients suffering from the condition. And in a nutshell, like most autoimmune conditions, the body mistakenly targets and attacks healthy tissue, thinking it's a foreign body. So it's an incredibly debilitating disease, just as RA. But then if you think about other autoimmune conditions like Crohn's disease, multiple sclerosis, inflammatory bowel disease, psoriasis, there's a whole bunch of these autoimmune conditions that are mediated through overactive inflammatory system. And that's where SetPoint comes into play. The idea is by activating an innate endogenous pathway through the vagus nerve that in healthy humans is balancing out your immune system, we can restore the body's ability to balance out the immune system in patients living with autoimmune conditions. So our device is an implantable nerve stimulator that's placed on the vagus nerve on the left side. It's about the size of a large multivitamin.
I'm going to ask you, it's got to be pretty small.
Yeah, it is, because as you think about the mechanistic approach here, it doesn't take a lot of energy. Evolution through generations and millennia have really fine-tuned the body's ability to use low power, low energy systems to balance the body's functions. We don't have battery packs that we carry around, right? So I think, so that's the beauty of this approach, which has taken a couple of decades to elucidate and develop. It started off through a discovery at the Feinstein Institute in Long Island, New York, by a neurosurgeon turned immunology researcher named Kevin Tracy. So he's the one who discovered this mechanism that the vagus nerve, through very specific targeting, balances the immune system and maintains that homeostasis of the inflammatory system. Since then, he co-founded SetPoint Medical. Okay. And then since then, we've developed the device to translate that discovery into what we now have as an FDA-approved therapy to treat RA patients who don't respond to traditional medications.
That's awesome, man. Wow. Such a cool history. And this is the thing about med device, is that it does take time. But once it's here, the promise is so big. And you also don't have those timelines that pharma does. I feel like it's the sweet spot. All right, let's get into marketing. Like, you guys are probably in this space doing a combo of consumer marketing as well as physician marketing, right? HCP marketing. Talk to us about some of the things that you're most excited about on the marketing front in communicating what the company wants to get to customers and the end user.
Yeah, I think because of our unique story and impacting a space that's predominantly biological drugs, which are incredibly expensive, there's a third layer to our marketing approach too, which is payers. So basically, talk about all three of them. And at the outset, I'll just say that we've taken a fairly evidence-based, scientifically rigorous approach to do all of our marketing as well. And it starts with patient marketing. If you think about an implantable device for patients who have options as injections, oral pills, or infusions, the first question we had to address on the marketing side is, why would a person living with rheumatoid arthritis want to undergo a surgical implant procedure to get this device placed? That sort of refined a lot of that question, and the research behind it refined a lot of our marketing strategies and approaches that we're taking towards reaching out to patients and educating them on what this therapy would be. And a lot of it just came down to good research and listening to our end user, right? Mm-hmm. Marketing 101 in a way.
Yeah.
And so specifically reaching out to consumers and those living with RA, our research indicates that patients, especially after the first biologic experience, would prefer a therapy that's one and done implantable device for 10 years of therapy versus taking oral pills or getting infusions or injecting themselves every couple of weeks, primarily because it's out of sight, out of mind. Once you're implanted, it automatically delivers, but also related to the issues of the existing therapies, which increase your immunosuppressive risks. So what we heard from patients is they didn't want to feel like living in a bubble anymore. They didn't want to be concerned about the side effects that were coming up. And that's what we've really honed in on as we talk to people living with RA. And we did a little bit of a pilot on our direct-to-consumer marketing in our clinical study. In order to drive enrollment, we stood up a website where we educated patients on what the therapy was. There was a call center associated with that website, so patients could actually make an appointment to talk to a real person.
And so it's so rare nowadays.
Yeah, and that was one of our secret sauces that really helped us. And then, of course, we lean in on social media, given the demographics of RA patients, which tend to be 3/4 women, typically in their 40s and 50s. So, the classic audience for Instagram or Facebook. We piloted our direct to consumer outreach on those platforms, specifically social media ads. And what we saw was a tremendous uptick in interest in this therapy. To put some numbers around it, for a study that was enrolling 250 patients, we had over 24,000 people who came in and filled out the eligibility form to see if they could participate in the study. So
awesome.
That was a great pilot. And it bore out even in our clinical study where 40% of the patients who enrolled in the study had only failed one biologic when they have access to 12 other FDA-approved drugs. So it underscored what we heard in our research, which is for RA patients, they're looking for a differentiated therapeutic option. And that's what we're leading in on for our direct-to-consumer marketing.
That's really cool, man. I love that. I appreciate you sharing that. I think you were going to go to some of the other ones, right?
Happy to do
Yeah, let's do it. Before you do, like, that is so cool. And I was going to ask you before we get to payers and physicians, have you found that your engineer training has been an asset to your marketing?
I would 100% say so. Look, it's an N of one example. But if I was to pick out one engineering skill that I use every single day, multiple times a day, it's this problem solving ability, right?
Yeah.
And I think as engineers, you are trained to look at a problem, break it down into bite-sized situations that you can solve for. And that is very much transferable to so many other aspects of your professional life as well as your personal life, specifically tied to marketing, because at the end of the day, it's asking the questions, understanding the response, whether it's in the lab or whether it's on market research data, and then making decisions informed by those responses to solve complex problems. So I would 100% underscore the value of my engineering background in whatever we're doing here at Point.
And there's definitely rigor, right? There's rigor to that engineer mindset in solving those problems. So that's so cool, man. All right. Well, we were going to go to physicians or payers next, right?
Yes. On the physician side, again, it's nothing crazy here. We're trying to increase awareness and build belief in our mechanism of action and our data. So it's the usual outreach that a lot of medical device companies do: speaker programs, peer-to-peer events, webinars. So no secret sauce there. It's just about getting to the right physicians who are innovators and are willing to start building these programs with us to say, look, I see a need for novel therapeutic options. How do I enable that in my practice? So our focus on the physician side is really on identifying these, what we call trailblazer physicians. And on the payer side, it's again telling the value story on the economic front for SetPoint Medical. We just published earlier this year, we published a health economic data paper that highlights that with SetPoint therapy, US payers can save upwards hundreds of thousands of dollars in biologic costs, but that break-even point happens as quickly as 16 months. And within 2 years, versus continuing with the standard of care medical practice, SetPoint therapy can provide $25,000 worth of savings. So again, we took a fairly rigorous scientific approach there. We ran a really effective health economic model, put it through the peer review process at a high tier journal of medical economics, and got it published. And now we're in the process of reaching out to payers to ensure they can understand the mechanism of action and the value we provide on the economic front as well as the clinical front.
I think that's awesome, man. Congrats on the results of that. I was like very impactful in a very financially incentivized sort of group of personas. What's a challenge that you feel healthcare marketers face that isn't being talked about enough?
I think every market is different. I'll just start off there. And so I don't want to paint the whole marketing, the healthcare marketing with a broad brush there to say it might apply to everyone. But I would say one of the things that I've struggled with consistently throughout my career in medical device marketing is how do we identify the right physician groups at different stages of launch, right? Like this is no secret, right? Like crossing the chasm, understanding physician segmentation, customer segmentation broadly. I feel like that has always been a critical aspect of any launch I've been a part of. I always talk about this with my team is it's easy to launch a product, but where a good marketer earns their stripes is really once that enthusiasm of a launch is gone, how do you drive depth and how do you make your therapy standard of care and continue to build credibility and value in that brand? And I feel like that's where segmentation becomes absolutely crucial. So I'd say that's an area that, while you could call it marketing 101, it's doing that really well is crucial to any successful product launch. And
love that, man. Yeah. And I feel like when the glitz and glam, like you said, of the launch is over, where's that discipline that helps you stay consistent through full adoption. I think that's a really great call out. What would you say is a bold or risky move you've taken recently?
And so bold is one of our core values, being bold.
Oh, is it?
At SetPoint Medical. So we do a lot of things which are not standard. I would say as a company, one of the decisions we made fairly early on, which I truly believe is going to be a difference maker in our success ramp that we will have, is convincing ourselves first, then the broader decision makers, whether it was our board, the FDA, physicians, our study investigators, that SetPoint system in particular, but medical devices broadly, don't belong as end of line care. That was a decision we made fairly early on, backed by the patient research I talked about, to say we need to go out there and position this as truly the next option after the patients fail the first biologic or first advanced RA therapy, for example.
Yeah.
We didn't want to be end of line. And as I mentioned, there's 12 FDA approved RA therapies. So how do we get in front of that line was a fairly bold decision we made. And I think it's going to be a big difference maker to have an indication statement that allows RA patients to choose SetPoint early in the treatment journey. It's not only impactful from a clinical outcomes perspective, because if the sooner you intervene, the higher your response rates are, but it will also make a massive difference in people living with these autoimmune conditions because you won't be immunosuppressing yourself. So it was a fairly bold bet as an organization to say, you know what, we're not going to do what is traditionally done, which is let's start with the refractory population where the need is easy to justify, and then we'll make our way up. We sort of went out there and said, let's go early on. And again, I will say was informed by the research that we had as much as the willingness to help people.
Yeah. And you got to do what's best for patients, but also is it being done economically, right? And with this clinical economic research you guys have, it's clear. And by the way, I would love to include some of that stuff in our show notes if you'd like.
Yeah, it's all public information. So it's all published in peer-reviewed journals. So happy to send those references over.
Brilliant. Look, Ankit, this next question comes from one of our previous guests. We have a tradition here at Healthcare Marketing Executive of asking our guests questions from our previous guests, and you're also going to get the opportunity to ask our next guest the question. This one comes from Yakub Grajkar. He's the head of marketing at Talkie AI, and it's tell us about one connection that changed the trajectory of your life and or career.
Yeah, if I was to, there have been a lot of folks who've been instrumental in getting me here, but if I was to pick one person, it would be Vivek Jayaraman, who now I think he runs a Cirrus Biosciences now, which is a blood purification technology. But I ran into Vivek as an engineer at Medtronic.
Really?
And just through outreach to understand what is healthcare marketing, what is medical device marketing. It started off with a quick half-an-hour conversation in his office around, what do you do? And
that's awesome.
His guidance has been instrumental through my early career, where he not only helped me understand what is medical device marketing. It's not just brochures and websites. It's a lot more strategy behind it. How do you bring clinical messaging into that? How do you understand? How do you talk to physicians, payers, patients, engineers, all these different stakeholders? His guidance was invaluable. He also gave me an opportunity to join his group when he was the vice president of marketing and the endovascular business at Medtronic. And that was a key catalyst in my journey to become a healthcare marketer.
That is cool, Ankit. And so how did you reach out to him and why him? How did that all happen?
Yeah, this is the beauty about an organization like Medtronic, which has incredibly talented people and so many resources. And it was honestly just a conversation with my manager as I was trying to figure out, is being in the lab the right pathway for me? And we had a physician visit come by. So I just told her, hey, who manages these physician visits? Can you connect me to folks who do that? Because I really enjoyed that interaction with the physicians who were visiting the lab. And she was kind enough to connect me with Vivek. And so it was very serendipitous, but also emblematic of the developmental opportunities you get in an organization like Medtronic.
Oh, listen, I'll second that. Those mid-year reviews and end-of-year reviews, the who and the how, all that stuff, while we might feel like it's busy work, if you're really in the need for it, it makes a big difference when that structure exists. You're a great example of that, Ankit. I've lived it. I had a very good career there at Medtronic, and it's because of that intentionality. Shout out to Vivek for the impact you have had on Ankit. And it's just amazing to see the type of influence you can have on and the great things that people do with what you do. Ankit, what question do you want to leave our next marketing leader with?
I'm always, maybe this is the engineering perspective. It's what are the blind spots we have? So the question I will leave you with would be, what is the discussion around healthcare marketing we're not having in 2026 that we should be having? I think there's a lot of discussion around AI and the impact there, but I wonder, what are we not talking about that we should be talking about?
Great question. And you guys know how this goes. We leave an open loop. You guys keep tuning in. And we get the next marketer to tell us what they think on this. By the way, what do you think we're not talking about? I think that's a question that we would love to hear from you too, to keep the conversations going. And if this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend. That's how you get the word out. And that's how you build the network and the skills that you want to grow your career and help your organization succeed. Ankit, thank you so much for joining us. This has really been a pleasure.
Thanks, Saul. Appreciate it and enjoyed it. Thank you.